Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fireside chat of the NOVAFRICA Knowledge Center. My name is Galina Vysotska. I'm the head of NOVAFRICA student group and a recent graduate from the Masters in Economics at Nova SB. Our speaker today is Alberto Marden da Cruz. Alberto has been working as a researcher at the International Growth Center, particularly as a country program officer at the IGC Mozambique. Alberto is now in his last semester of the Masters in Management at Nova SB and part of the NOVAFRICA Knowledge Center. Welcome, Alberto. It's a pleasure for us to be here with you today.
Thank you, Garima, for having me today.
And today we are talking about retaining talent. Brain drain is seen as a serious problem for the development of the African continent, as every year many African students leave the continent to pursue their studies abroad, especially in Europe. Alberto, let's start with defining the problem. Can you briefly define brain drain? What do you think are the features of this phenomenon that are particular to African countries?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I am not a brain drain expert, but I believe that my experience can be useful to our conversation. And going to your question, well, in the last days, it's very common when we switch on our TV, be confronted by migration headlines. So from that, we can say that it is a matter of concern for many nations, mainly the European one. In fact, every day, thousands of people with different backgrounds leave their homelands for many reasons, looking for better conditions in another. The flow of people from one place to another implies losses and gains from both sides. So I believe that you are familiar with what is happening in Europe has impact of the migration. In the departing point, I would like to mention that there is a significant losses of skilled and brilliant people need to boost the local productivity. So this phenomenon we can call brain drain, which can be defined as migration and takeoff of brilliant and skilled people from one geographic zone to another one. So I think this can be for me one of clear definition of brain drain. And looking for Africa in particular, I think that what we can see is that in Africa, we have enormous number of people leaving the continent, and so is its impact. Remember that African countries are younger, and during the colonialism, there wasn't a clear investment in African people education, even or less in human capital education. And because the challenges for African countries are in all levels, little remains to invest in education. Now, imagine what happened if a few qualified people we manage to produce in Africa leave the countries. The impact is tremendous, and less remains to boost the local development. And there is other particular factors that I believe that they play a role for people willing to leave the country. And I can mention, for example, the lack in improving job opportunities. As you can know, or as you know, the majority of countries or African countries has 2 digits of unemployment. So the rate for of employment in Africa is very tight. And the second point we can mention is the lack in improving the quality of education in all levels. The third, lack in technology development with impact in the work environment, deteriorated life condition, poor lifestyle, and living facility. Last is a lack of political freedom. As a consequence of these factors, when combined, they contribute for a mass migration in Africa. So in brief, the problem here in Africa is the number of people that are living, but on the other hand, because the number of qualified people in Africa is little, so the impact in the development is high.
Thank you. And so if we look at your background, you're actually one of the examples of the brain drain, because you've been working in Mozambique, but then you decided to continue your studies in Portugal. And now, correct me if I'm mistaken, the question is whether to stay abroad or to go back home. So could you tell us maybe about main points you're considering while taking this decision?
Well, in my perspective, the decision where to go further is driven by three elements, or four elements actually. One is job opportunity, second is financial incentives, third is work environment, and last, career development. But I'd like to focus on three of them that I believe that are critical. First is the financial incentives. Having born in poor condition and in poor country, obviously, in Mozambique in that case, the willing to improve my life and my family condition is above all natural. And additionally, the main wage in Mozambique is low, around 6 euros per month. For me, that's for someone with a master's degree, and in the public sector, it's even low. So if I can get more in another place, my question to you is why not? And the second point here is work environment, not just about the technology, but people surrounding us. In the place I worked, I found one or two qualified people, including myself. So going further has the advantage of finding people better than me, which can fortify my pillars of knowledge. The last is career development. Little is said about the local system or how the local system can influence brain development. In the most cases, when you work, I mean here in Africa, in public sector, for example, if you are good, even being good enough, your ideas remains on silence. Why? Because what matter is not the results for the organization you are working for, but what your boss in high positions gain from your ideas. All these factors, or this one in particular, frustrate and make people willing to live. So when we look, I think that these are the three main factors that can influence myself from leaving my country and look other opportunities abroad.
Thank you. And Alberto, I know you've been working in the area where research and policy implementation meet. What should be, in your opinion, strategy for the brain drain issue?
Well, I think this is the most complex question for today, and likewise the phenomenon we're talking about. But I believe that in any effective response to brain drain comes from combined efforts from developed countries and Africa, with Africa playing the most relevant role, obviously. And it could take a long time if we leave all the responsibilities on the hand of African governments, because, as we said, the phenomenon is complex. But when we look at the European country perspective, I think that they should see, or it should see itself has the most benefited from this process. If one does not agree, then I would say that it should have compassion by understanding that more than ever, Africa needs more qualified people to enhance progress. I recognize that they have channeled, I mean, the European countries have channeled a lot of effort to help human development in Africa. Actually, without that, I wouldn't be here today. So I can take this moment to thank Nova SBF for the opportunity and other organizations that are working in human capital development in Africa. However, we're still far from the ideal. You can work as developed country to increase support, mainly to boost the number of people, of qualified people in Africa by supporting the education system and focus on the quality. I can say that many universities in Africa, for example, a lack of quality. So investing in education or supporting these universities or educational system to improve the quality, I think that we can reduce the impact of brain drain in Africa. Lastly, or in the other end, for the African leaders, I think they must start changing their mindset, start to see educated people not as a threat to their power, instead as a pillar for their country's development. It would require a serious internal reforms and investment in education and work incentive, which is possible to do. South Africa and Nigeria lead by example. They have a high rate of educated people. And so the brain drain for them has a little effect. And that is what we're looking here for, this combination or effort combination between these two parts, Africa and Europe.
So we looked at the possible policies how to prevent brain drain. We don't have that much time, but maybe you can briefly tell us, is it always bad when African students leave their country? Is there a brain gain, for example?
Yes, I think very briefly what I can say, I think so far what we're saying is that maybe our arguments are very pessimistic and saying that brain drain undermine African developments. But in fact, there is a gain. And very briefly, nowadays we see a lot of evidence, for example, in Cape Verde, Philippines, showing that when the most educated of a country leave, parents and children that are still in their home countries tend to invest more in education. And that means that the country gains as a whole, as it ends up having more educated people staying at home. And also migration change cultural norms and improve the political institution. I think another thing that I can mention very briefly is the return of migration, which in fact creates new business and increase political participation and accountability. And the most common benefits that we see is that the money that immigrants sent back home is often of a large value than foreign development aid or foreign direct investment. In other words,
I'm sorry, I think we're running out of time. Thank you, Alberto. Thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you so much.